Welcome back to Manic Episodes. In case you didn't catch it, my last review was for the 1987 series Beauty and the Beast, starring Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. It might help to watch that to understand a bit of my criticisms here, but it shouldn't be required viewing. Assuming I do my job right. Anyway, they remade the show. Yeah, it's not a retelling of the fairy tale, it's a retelling of the fairy tale. Yeah. So, while it's true that the new Beauty and the Beast should be judged on its own merits, it's also important to remember what made the original show so successful. You can't not compare, because the reason the show fails is not only because it's a bad program, but because we've already seen it done a lot better. So, let's get into it. Since only the pilot is aired at this stage, it's possible the show will improve. But seeing as how this sets up how the show is going to run for the rest of the season, and most of the faults lie in the changes to the premise, I'm not holding out too much hope. First, the bad news. It's on the CW. I actually don't have any good news after that. The plot goes as so. Catherine Chandler's life is saved by a monster the night her mother is killed. She spends the next 9 years becoming a detective to try and solve her mother's murder and discover who this mysterious beast was that saved her. The new Catherine is Kristen Kruick, who you might remember from Smallville. She's pretty much the same character here, down to her role of trying to discover who the beast is instead of the Blur. This changes by the end of the pilot, but I'm not getting much else from her character, truth be told. By changing her story, they took away a bit of what made her so interesting in the original series. When Catherine is scarred by the men who attacked her, she had to see past her own ugliness to see the beauty in Vincent. Physical attractiveness wasn't as important anymore. She became a stronger person because of her tragedy. In the remake, it's a bit less poetic. She loses her mom, and that sets her on her path, but it's a bit generic. And again, it's bringing Smallville flashbacks. I also have to question her abilities as a cop because she's awful in this. At one point, she's attacked by thugs in a subway and leaves their unconscious bodies on the tracks, presumably leaving them to die horrible deaths. She never reports the bodies, and the first thing she does is go have a beer with the stranger she just met. And to top it all off, she leaves her cell phone there, and her cop friend finds it, and her friend didn't report that either. She doesn't even ask what she was there for, meaning I guess she's perfectly okay with corrupt business practices as long as it's her friend. The whole episode is full of things that would have gotten any other cop fired, such as covering up for Vincent, which, by the way, she has no real motive to do at this point, and immediately describing all of the incriminating evidence to the person they're arresting like it's a freaking Scooby-Doo plot. She's terrible at her job, is what I'm saying. She's also got her own version of 50s McHandsome in her English coworker who has no chance in hell, and we all know it. It could be a heartbreaking story for him if he had any sort of personality, but they don't bother to set up who he is or why we should care. We go into this with them already knowing each other, he asks her on a date that she flakes out on, and he just tries again without even really feeling bad about it. He had one scene where he was kind of annoyed, but he forgets about it the next time he shows up. It's not even played like he forgives her, it just seems like he goes into reset mode when the plot needs him to. You can't like or hate him because there's nothing there. Jay Ryan plays Vincent Keller, our new beast. You can probably see what went wrong now. The backstory here is that Vincent was fighting in Iraq when they experimented on him to create a super soldier. Now when he's really angry, he can turn into a beast with super strength. Like the Hulk. In fact, it is the Hulk. Here lies the huge issue with this remake. I have never seen something so monumentally miss the point in all my life. The Beast is not a beast. He's a glorified Hulk or werewolf, and that's not what the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale is about. Ignore all the different variations on the story and focus on the core elements. It's about finding love in someone despite their appearance, seeing beyond the surface. The girl was so focused on the handsome prince that she didn't realize he was there all along, she just couldn't see it. And moreover, if you're going to try and remake the 1987 series, you have to realize what the story was that they were trying to tell. Vincent could never be part of the world, and so he and Catherine could never be together. By turning him into some hot guy who turns into a monster sometimes, you've eliminated everything that made Beauty and the Beast romantic, tragic, or interesting for that matter. Ooh, he's got a scar, whoop-de-doo. Yeah, in this story he faked his death so he has to lay low, but he can still be part of the world. He can still walk around and be with other people. There's nothing for anyone to look past, he's just a normal dude. Look at this guy. He looks like more of a beast than Vincent, and he's his roommate. Yeah, Vincent has a roommate. They've replaced the fantastical underground world from the '87 series with a beer in the fridge and a Wii. Oh my gosh, it's such pretty people problems. As much as I harped on the original series for its faults, it had a lot of things that it did right. It was an urban fantasy. It had a tragic romance, it had great effects and beautiful sets, and it told Vincent's story. He was a man who never was a man, who was a beautiful person despite his faults. This new series has none of that. It doesn't have much creativeness or thought behind it. It's all gloss and no substance. It's the kind of gloss that leaves a nice sheen on something, but there really isn't much worth looking at. This show turns what Vincent is into a fault, and that goes against everything that the original show stood for. This isn't about finding acceptance in someone for who they are, it's about finding a cure for them. It's about becoming like everyone else. The CW is the absolute worst network to be running this, because their image is very much about beautiful people. In fact, that's what most of the promotions for the show are touting, that the cast is so beautiful. But you cannot run a show about a woman who falls in love with a beast and not go out of your comfort zone. And putting aside the beast element, making everyone young and beautiful takes the show out of reality. It looks like this police station is run by babies. I understand you want appealing actors in your lead roles, but all I'm asking is that it's not so pre-packaged and plastic. Get real people. Get quirky people. Break out of the CW mold, because the only people this is going to appeal to now are Twilight fans. And really, that's what this is, a glorified Twilight show. You have a monster, but you get to have someone handsome too. I think it bears repeating that it just comes off as pretty people problems. And really, I couldn't care less. And that's honestly how this pilot came off to me. It's a lot of who cares. The crime element wasn't interesting, the story was blah, and I got nothing from any of the characters. It's not even enough to really be angry or annoyed with it. It was just incredibly boring and generic. It's a lot of why did they make this, why should I care, and why bother? Just judging the show on its own merits, there's nothing worth investing your time into. If you're curious, it airs on Thursday nights, but I wouldn't get terribly attached. This is one show they won't be renewing for a second season.
Sarcasm in my smile. You better